You are Veronica Bland, and you live at 42 Gordon Road, Fulchester West.
That's correct, yes.
And what is your occupation, please?
I'm senior sister in the intensive care unit at Bellsides Hospital.
Are you acquainted with the accused in this case? Miss Bland?
Yes, that is Mr. Stephen Saul, assistant to Sir Austin Semple, consultant thoracic surgeon at Bellsides. He has been at the hospital for about a year now. He's an Australian.
And have you on occasion acted as theatre sister to Mr. Saul, Miss Bland?
I have.
Did you act as theatre sister to him during a particular operation he performed on the evening of May the 7th last? Really, Miss Bland, this is a perfectly straightforward question, I believe.
Yes. Yes, I was theatre sister in an operation performed by Mr. Saul on May the 7th on a patient from intensive care, a Mr. Eric Maple. The operation was for a heart transplant. Sir Austin Semple was not present. At first, the operation appeared to be a complete success, but on the following morning, Mr. Maple died.
Today in the Crown Court, Mr. Stephen Saul, surgeon of Bellsides Hospital, Fulchester, faces 2 charges arising out of the death of Eric Maple, on whom he performed a heart transplant. One is a charge of criminal assault. The other is a charge of manslaughter.
I see. So on May the 7th, this operation was performed, and Sir Austin Semple wasn't present, you say?
No.
Now, is that an altogether usual situation?
I'm sorry?
Well, Sir Austin is the consultant thoracic surgeon at Bellsides Hospital. A heart transplant, major thoracic surgery, and the consultant simply not there.
There is a team of 10 doctors on constant standby for heart surgery. Usually, when there's an emergency, Sir Austin leads them, it's true, but on this occasion, well, Mr. Saul did.
Sir Austin is Mr. Saul's superior, however, isn't he?
Oh, yes.
In both professional status and skill as a surgeon.
My lord, I must object. Although clearly a woman of wide experience in the medical field, the witness is being asked to make a comment on Mr. Saul's skill as a surgeon, which can hardly be called within her competence.
Quite. Mr. Golding, you shouldn't need telling that. Although Mr. Saul's skill as a surgeon is arguably a matter which is going to be of some relevance in this case. But before we get on with this evidence, I must confess to something that's worrying me about this case. It's about the earlier testimony from the pathologist, which established that Maple died as a result of internal hemorrhage following surgery, and that jaundice was revealed. Now, may this not all be a natural hazard from major surgery?
I'm afraid I don't follow, Your Lordship.
Well, in order to prove manslaughter, Mr. Golding, you must show that the accused was guilty of gross negligence in performing the operation that he did, and that his medical attentions were such as to accelerate the death of his patient. You see, some sort of accidental mistake from which death ensued would not be manslaughter. I refer you to Rex against Webb, 1834.
Yes, my lord, I have that authority with me. May I, in turn, refer you to Rex against Burdine, 1916, in which it is stated that a doctor must use competent skill and sufficient attention, or leave himself open to a major charge in a case of this sort.
That, of course, is a statement of general principle. It would still be necessary to prove negligence.
Oh, Your Lordship may rest assured that the evidence will show that Mr. Saul failed in the matters of both competence and attention, and also that by performing the heart transplant, he accelerated the death of his patient, Eric Maple.
Very well, Mr. Golding.
My lord. Miss Bland, perhaps it would be best if you were simply to tell the court what occurred at Bellside Hospital on the night of May the 7th.
Well, Eric Maple was a patient who had been admitted to our intensive care unit about 10 days previously. He was a man with a bad cardiac history. But as it happened, he had responded well to treatment and was due to be transferred to an ordinary ward pending discharge on about May the 10th. At just after 7 p.m., however, on May the 7th, he suffered a massive cardiac attack. I was on duty and Mr. Saul was the roster surgeon. I summoned him and he at once applied the heart defibrillator.
The heart defibrillator, now what's that exactly?
It is a device for stabilizing the heartbeat after a coronary attack. Unfortunately, in Mr. Maple's case, it failed to produce the desired effect.
And so what was done next?
Mr. Saul said that we would have to put the patient on the heart-lung machine.
Perhaps you could give us some idea what this is too.
Well, What the heart-lung machine does is to channel the circulation through an exterior pump, bypassing the heart, so that the doctor is then free to examine the heart itself and find out exactly what's wrong. All this Mr. Saul did. And then he made a series of attempts to restart Mr. Maple's heart. However, even after the 6th attempt, it wouldn't take over.
Miss Bland, you must remember that you're talking to lay people here. Now, what do you mean when you say that Mr. Saul made a series of attempts to restart the heart, but it wouldn't take over?
Well, the heart-lung machine is only meant to be a temporary measure, my lord. The heart must resume its job of pumping the blood round the body, or nothing has been achieved. A patient on the heart-lung machine is, well, in an odd sort of state, really. He's neither cured of his illness nor properly sick anymore, but in suspended animation.
Yes, I see. All right.
So you're telling us, are you, that Mr. Saul, having put his patient on the heart-lung machine, found that he couldn't safely alter their state of affairs? So what did he do as a consequence?
Around 8:30, he said that he would have to send for Sir Austin Semple.
Sir Austin wasn't in the hospital, in other words?
No. It was Saturday. He'd gone home for the weekend.
Miss Bland, can you remember the exact words Mr. Saul used when he told you he'd have to send for Sir Austin Semple?
I'm sorry?
The exact words.
Miss Bland, you seem afflicted by the strangest hesitations. Do you perhaps imagine you're assisting the accused by this display of reluctance?
I'm sorry, my lord, but I was hoping to be left out of all this when it came to court. Mr. Saul is a good surgeon and has always behaved well in the theatre, as far as I can tell. I'm really not very concerned in whatever it is has gone so wrong between him and Sir Austin.
Miss Bland, that is a comment and not evidence.
Yes, Miss Bland, simply answer the counsel's questions. Now, what were the exact words used?
He said, "Tell them it was carve-up night at the vet's, Veronica, if they ask why I took no action here. I'm turning this over to the old urger."
Old urger?
An Australian colloquialism, my lord, not complimentary.
No, obviously not.
But what did Mr. Saul mean by the other part of his remark, Miss Bland? Tell them it was carve-up night down at the vet's if they ask why I took no action here. Can you tell us?
Well, that was referring back to something which took place in my office in intensive care the day before. Sir Austin and Mr. Saul had come in the middle of a fearful row. I don't know what it was about, but they were both very angry. Mr. Saul accused Sir Austin of being stubborn and old-fashioned.
Were stubborn and old-fashioned the precise words Mr. Saul used, Miss Bland?
No, not exactly.
Let us then be exact, then.
Bone-headed and reactionary.
Thank you, Miss Bland. And Sir Austin made some response to this, did he?
Yes. Yes, he said that Mr. Saul should not be allowed to perform any more heart surgery in the unit for the time being, that Mr. Saul was obviously more concerned with operations than with patients, and that if his freedom of action were not curtailed, there was some danger that sooner or later he'd...
Yes. Sooner or later what?
He'd use a patient as a guinea pig.
I see. Now, to return to 8:30 p.m. or thereabouts on the night of May the 7th, did Mr. Saul in fact contact Sir Austin Semple?
He went to telephone. By that time, 2 other members of the standby team had been called up and they were supervising the heart-lung machine. So I made my way back to my office. On my way there, I met Mr. Saul returning. He had a slip of paper in his hand. He seemed very excited. He showed me the paper.
Or what was it, Miss Bland?
It was a notification from our casualty department saying that our heart was available.
Saying that a heart was available?
Yes, my lord.
Yes. Is it standard procedure for your unit to receive notifications of this kind?
Well, in any hospital that does transplant surgery, my lord, there's always the question of how you get the organs you're likely to need. As you may know, in the case of the heart, it's especially difficult. One can't have a bank of hearts, as you can of kidneys, say. Mostly you have to wait until a heart is available. That means an accident victim, as a rule, who's next of kin or willing to allow the heart to be used.
And that was precisely the situation which had arisen in your own casualty department?
Yes, a girl of about 22 had been brought in after a car crash. The head was pulped, but the heart was healthy and undamaged, and the parents had signed a release form.
I see.
Now, did Mr. Saul give you a certain instruction once you'd studied this notification from casualty, Miss Bland?
Yes. He said, "Stand by the transplant team, Veronica, could be we're in business."
And did you, in reply, ask a certain question of Mr. Saul?
I don't remember anything special. There really isn't any time when it's a question of a heart transplant.
Miss Bland, I imagine we're all aware by now that you heartily dislike having to testify for the prosecution in this case, but you really mustn't keep evading the issues in this manner. It just wastes time, and it never works.
I believe I asked if Sir Austen would be leading the team.
And what did he reply?
Tell the others Sir Austen's in the country and can't be reached. The hell with Sir Austen Semple and the...
And
the hell with Eric Maple.
And
And then something to the effect that if he was supposed to be on the lookout for a guinea pig, then he'd just found a main contender, hadn't he?
anything else, Miss Bland?
This is where I blind the world, Veronica, no matter what it costs. I'd like to say, my lord, that Mr. Saul is an exemplary surgeon. Really he is.
Thank
I have
you, Miss
seen very
Bland.
many, and
That
I
is
do
all.
know.
Thank you, Miss Bland. That will do.
You are Frida Jane Maple of 4 The Towers, Wiltwood, Fulchester.
I am.
What is your marital status?
I am a widow.
What was your late husband's name, please?
Eric Fordyce Maple.
How did his death come about?
In late April last, he was admitted to Belsize Hospital for treatment for a heart condition. There, a certain operation was performed upon him. There, a certain doctor murdered him.
Mrs. Maple, I entirely understand your feelings at the loss of your husband, but I will not tolerate accusations like that in this court. I certainly shan't want to caution you again. Members of the jury, will you please disregard that last remark? The prosecution alleged that the defendant was guilty of manslaughter, not murder. All right, Mr. Goulding.
Mrs. Maple, are you acquainted with the accused in this case, Mr. Stephen Saul?
Yes. Yes, he was the man who performed that operation.
What operation, Mrs. Maple?
A dreadful operation, an immoral operation, I say. Against nature and against God, too, probably.
You're a person of very strict principle, are you, Mrs. Maple?
I hope I know right from wrong.
Are you opposed to the very notion of transplant surgery?
When it's a question of a thing like a heart, yes, I am. Or if it was the brain, say, anything like that. Things are going too far these days, too far, and that's wrong, I'm sure of it.
Have you always felt as strongly as this on the subject, Mrs. Maple?
As far as I can remember. Me and my husband along with me.
So the late Mr. Maple was also opposed to the notion of transplant surgery, was he?
Oh, yes, we were quite agreed about things like that.
My lord, this is hearsay and in my submission quite inadmissible.
No, Miss Dotterby, I think this comes within the exception of the hearsay rule, which allows in matters which establish a relevant person's state of mind.
Will your lordship nevertheless make a note of my objection?
Yes, if you wish.
Mrs. Maple, before this operation of which you're speaking was performed on your husband, did anyone from Belsize Hospital, doctor or administrative officer, approach you to seek your consent for it?
No, not a soul.
Absolutely no one?
No.
Would you, in fact, have given your consent if you had been approached?
Well, it's not a question of what I would have done as to what my husband would have wanted. He was as much against transplants as I am, I keep saying. He'd have been shocked by the very idea that they were thinking of putting someone else's heart into him, the young girls.
So neither you nor your husband would remotely have consented to this operation that was in fact performed on him on the night of May the 7th?
No.
Had it ever been suggested to you on an earlier occasion that there could be the possibility of such an operation? Mrs. Maple?
About a week before he died, I was in hospital to see Sir Austen Semple. I wasn't allowed to see Eric, not whilst he was still in intensive care. Just as I was leaving, Mr. Saul took me aside. He told me that from his point of view, Eric was responding favourably to treatment, but that if anything went seriously wrong, there could be big problems. He then said that a question of a transplant might arise.
And what did you say to Mr. Saul about that, Mrs. Maple?
Well, I told him how Eric and I felt about such things.
There was no possibility that Mr. Saul might have misunderstood you on that occasion?
No.
I see. Now, to come to the morning of May the 8th last, Mrs. Maple, did you receive a phone call quite early on that day?
Yes, I did. The phone rang about 5 a.m. It was the secretary of the Belsize and Fulchester Hospital Group. He said that he had to inform me that major surgery had been performed upon my husband, and he asked if I could get to the hospital as soon as possible. Well, naturally, I went in straight away. When I was told all about it, well, I was struck dumb. I couldn't believe what had happened. Sir Austin Semple was there, and he just kept informing me that it was none of his doing, and he apologized profusely. And then they let me see Eric through a pane of glass. He had a lot of wires attached to him. He was propped up, and the medical people were hovering about like, well, I don't know what, really. It was awful. It was as if Eric was some sort of machine that had gone wrong. And then, perhaps an hour later, with that girl's heart in him, he died.
Thank you, Mrs. Maple. No further questions.
Mrs. Maple, could you tell the court... Mrs. Maple, if you feel too upset to continue... I'm sure
I'm not crying anymore. No, not at all.
Very well. Would you tell the court why you were so implacably opposed to the whole notion of heart transplant surgery?
I'm sorry?
Why do you find transplant surgery so immoral? Wasn't that the word you used?
Well, it's just wrong to me, terribly wrong. More than ever since all this.
It's a matter of religious belief with you, perhaps?
Oh, no. No, nothing like that.
It's a considered judgment, then, which, of course, can always be altered as new considerations come to light.
Well, I don't think that's very likely now, do you?
Well, not even if it were borne in on you that a major organ transplant is sometimes the only surgical course open to a doctor if he hopes to save a life.
But what Mr. Saul didn't save Eric's life.
But if there were absolutely nothing else a doctor could do, Mrs. Maple. Mrs. Maple, do you have any idea just how sick a man your husband was in his last illness?
Oh, yes. Yes, I knew all about that. The day I went in to see Sir Austin, he told me it was very serious. He told me I'd probably have to resign myself to the fact that Eric would never really be active again, but he said that with care, he could have a good life and carry on for years.
And the coronary thrombosis your husband suffered on the evening of May the 7th, were you told just how severely that worsened your husband's already critical condition?
No. All I was told about it was that it had happened. He'd had a heart attack, but that was the morning after, when Mr. Saul had already done the operation.
Mrs. Maple, can't you see that Mr. Saul may have had no other choice but to try and supply your husband with a new heart?
I object to that, my lord. My friend is asking not merely an opinion of the witness, but a medical opinion.
Surely that's obvious, Mr. Lottimer.
Of course, my lord, I apologise. Mrs. Maple, had it been borne in on you on the evening of May the 7th that the choice was between your husband dying there and then or being given the heart of a young woman, and mightn't you perhaps have consented to the transplant after all?
No.
You're absolutely convinced of that, are you?
How many times do I have to tell you I am against transplants? Anyway, I wasn't consulted on the night of May the 7th.
Well, does that surprise you? You'd already expressed to Mr. Saul your feelings about heart transplant operations. He knew quite well consulting you before operating would only lead to intolerable delay.
Yes, but that's still...
There's no time to waste when it's a question of a heart transplant, Mrs. Maple. The heart has to be transplanted from the donor's body as soon as possible after physical death has occurred. And Mr. Saul may well have judged that consulting you would be the equivalent of signing his patient's death warrant.
But he killed his patient anyway.
Killed? Oh, do choose your words carefully, Mrs. Maple. It seems to me that the most notable thing Mr. Saul did on the evening of May the 7th was exhibit an almost heroic indifference to his own fate. And doctors leave themselves open to certain consequences if it's shown they performed surgery without due permission. Mr. Saul may well have risked everything for the sake of his patient.
You can't turn it around like that. Eric wouldn't have wanted the transplant. I told you he'd have chosen to die rather than have it done. I know that.
Ah, yes, your husband's attitudes, of course. It's time we came to those. Now, you'd say you had a good marriage, would you, Mrs. Maple? You and your husband were a devoted couple.
Well, we were married 20 years. We had our ups and downs.
Any family?
No, Eric and I didn't have any children.
Who was the dominant party in the marriage?
What does that mean?
Most marriages, there's one party who's dominant, gives the orders, makes the demands, while the other party complies, if only for the sake of peace.
My lord, may I inquire if this line of questioning has any point?
Yes, my lord, it does have a point, which will be made clear even to my learned friend, if you will allow me to continue. Mrs. Maple?
Well, there wasn't a dominant party, not in our marriage. We just managed everything as best we could.
Despite the fact that for how long altogether, some 6 years or so, your husband was a sick man?
Well, it's true that as time went on, I had to assume more and more responsibility, yes.
Take more and more decisions, brook less and less opposition.
What?
Oh, come, Mrs. Maple, it was an invidious situation, wasn't it? Your husband a sick man, no children to help out. It all came back to you alone, didn't it? Home, the finances, the marriage itself. And you already had quite enough to cope with in your partner without him also having a mind of his own.
Oh, that's a terrible thing to say.
But is it true, Mrs. Maple? You've told us that you and your husband were quite agreed on the subject of transplant surgery. Are you prepared to swear to that beyond question?
He was so weak sometimes, you don't know. Even before he got sick. He would never push in business, anything like that. He'd just let people walk all over him. I only tried to make him as he should be.
I repeat, can you say with absolute confidence that your husband felt exactly as you do on the question of a heart transplant? Or is it not that he actually held quite different views, which he didn't dare to express to you?
You think about things like that when someone dies. Wonder if you've been too hard. That he was a weak man. And then he got sick. Well, what was I to do? I had to stand up for myself, you know. My life as well as his.
Thank you, Mrs. Maple.
You are Sir Austin Semple of 12 Trees, Finching Forest, and you are also consultant thoracic surgeon at Belsides Hospital, Fulchester.
Austin. Sir Austin. Yes.
Will you tell us, Sir Austin, if there is a professional connection between yourself and the accused, Mr. Stephen Saul?
Well, Mr. Saul is a surgeon whom, about a year ago now, I invited to become my personal assistant in the thoracic team at Belsides Hospital. He appeared to me then to have all the necessary qualifications for the job.
What qualifications exactly, Sir Austin?
Why, a skill in surgery, a coolness in judgment, and above all, a paramount concern for the welfare of his patient.
And do you still think Mr. Saul possesses these qualifications?
Frankly, no. A year's experience of him has taught me that I was wrong. Mr. Saul is, in fact, governed almost entirely by the demands of personal ambition. He aspires to be a star in the medical firmament. He will sacrifice almost anything to achieve that aim. I made a grave mistake in ever sponsoring him. He killed that patient, Eric Maple, you know, just to further his own career. Killed him.
The case of the Queen against Saul will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Mr. Stephen Saul, surgeon of Belsides Hospital, Fulchester, faces charges of manslaughter and criminal assault. On May the 7th, he performed a heart transplant on Eric Maple, a patient in the Belsides intensive care unit. Sister Bland had assisted at that operation. Mr. Maple had suffered a massive coronary thrombosis on the night in question and could be kept alive only by means of the heart-lung machine. However, Mr. Saul did not seek permission from Maple's wife Frida to perform the operation, and Mrs. Maple has made it clear that she would not have given such permission had it been sought. Mrs. Maple further claims her husband felt exactly as she did concerning transplant surgery. She insists Eric Maple would sooner have died than been the subject of the operation which killed him.
I see. So as consultant thoracic surgeon at Belside's Hospital, Sir Austin, you came to the conclusion, after years' experience of him, that Mr. Saul was a man motivated almost entirely by personal ambition.
That is correct, sir.
Was there any one thing that led you to this conclusion?
It is a matter of more general observation. Mr. Saul was arrogant, self-opinionated. You couldn't miss that in him. He couldn't dominate the situation. Mr. Saul was just not interested.
There were disputes between you then?
Constant disputes.
Now, could you tell us about some of these?
Well, we can come to the Eric Maple and the heart transplant directly, can we?
If you so wish.
Yes, well, Eric Maple was admitted into the intensive care unit at Belsides on the 29th of April last. Cardiogram showed us clearly that he was suffering from a diseased mitral valve.
Again, these are technical terms, and I think it is important that they should be explained to the jury, Sir Austin.
I beg your pardon, my lord. What we call a cardiogram is an X-ray picture of the chambers of the heart, achieved by injecting a radio-opaque liquid directly into them. This shows up as a shadow on the X-ray plate.
I see. And the mitral valve?
The mitral valve is a narrow orifice in the heart through which the blood is pumped into the left ventricle, thence to be fed into the aorta and the rest of the body. Malfunction of this valve can cause circulatory insufficiency, greater or lesser, depending on the extent of the damage.
I see. Thank you.
Now, in Eric Maple's case, how extensive was this damage to the mitral valve, Sir Austin?
Extensive enough. I was obliged to tell the wife, after our diagnosis, that her husband was in all probability never be on the fit list again.
Would you have called Eric Maple a hopeless case then, Sir Austin?
No. No, there was nothing hopeless about Eric Maple. Hopeless is a word you don't use until you're writing out the death certificate anyway. No, given care and a reasonable regimen, there was no reason why he shouldn't have lived for years. I have every confidence that he would have done if he'd been given half a chance.
And what treatment did you prescribe for Eric Maple, Sir Austin?
Medication at that stage. The heart was sluggish, needed the help of drugs. Later, I thought there might be a case for installing a pacemaker. That's a powered device, my lord, that keeps the heart beating at the right rate.
Did Mr. Saul agree with this treatment, Sir Austin?
No, Mr. Saul did not. Mr. Saul wanted to perform an operation for the replacement of the diseased mitral valve.
Now, is this medically possible?
Oh, yes, it's a common procedure. Replacement valves are made of stainless steel nowadays. But that does not necessarily mean that it should be advised in every case. One has to make up one's mind to proceed or not on all the evidence, not on just that part of it which happens to appeal to one.
You didn't yourself believe, then, that surgery should be attempted in the case of Eric Maple?
No, I did not. Every other method of treatment must be found useless before you reach for the knife. Now, besides, Eric Maple was in a generally debilitated condition. It was my seriously considered opinion that surgery at this stage might be the means of shortening his life rather than prolonging it.
Now, did you say all this to Mr. Saul, Sir Austin?
I did.
And did he have some comment in reply?
Well, I think he called me a prevaricating old ooh-jar.
Urger, isn't it?
Yes, my lord. Some very curious antipodean expression, I recall. He also said that if I wouldn't give him permission to perform an operation on the diseased mitral valve, we might in time have to think of a heart transplant.
Now, what did he mean by that, Sir Austin?
I don't know. But since he had raised the subject of a heart transplant, I told him there and then that as long as I was head of the unit, no such surgery would be performed on Eric Maple, nor indeed on any other patient if it could be avoided.
Why is that, Sir Austin? Can you tell us?
I'm sorry?
Well, are you in the general way opposed to heart transplant surgery?
Oh, well, the margin of success in these operations is extremely small. It can only be considered as a last-ditch measure in surgery. A gamble. There's nothing else left that you can do.
Sir Austin, would you say that this represents a general consensus of opinion of the medical profession on heart transplants?
I think more and more surgeons are coming to realize that the problems of rejection are immense, my lord.
Does this knowledge come to you from personal experience of heart transplant?
Oh, yes, my lord. I have considerable personal experience of the technique. Now, the research people nowadays are coming to think more of an efficient artificial pump to replace the diseased heart. If you won't misunderstand me, heart transplant is a very theatrical operation. Royal Shakespeare surgery, to coin a phrase.
In any event, you informed Mr. Saul that you wouldn't consider a transplant a heart transplant where Eric Maple was concerned, Sir Austin.
I did. I made that as clear to him as I could.
And was there yet more trouble as a result?
Things were decidedly uncivilized for a time. I told him that he'd come to look upon the patients in intensive care as experimental units.
Did you put that in a slightly different way, perhaps?
I imagine I used the word guinea pigs.
Now, on May the 7th, while you were not at the hospital, Sir Austin, Eric Maple had a massive coronary thrombosis.
Yes, that is so.
Were you notified of this, Sir Austin?
I regret to say that I was not.
Would you have expected to be notified?
Most certainly. A coronary thrombosis of a man in Maple's condition was a very serious affair. It was a hospital rule that under such circumstances I should have been informed.
Now, it's been testified that at about 8:30 p.m. when he alerted the transplant team, Mr. Saul gave it out that you were away in the country and couldn't be reached. Now, was there in fact any truth in that, Sir Austin?
On the night of May the 7th, I was at home and did not go out, as a telephone call at any time could have verified. First I heard of the affair was when the hospital secretary rang me up, in the early hours of May the 8th, to tell me what had occurred and ask me what might be going on in my own department. Well, I went to the hospital immediately, but by then there was very little that could be done. I tried to see that all the immunosuppressive measures were taken to help the heart transplant, but by then rejection symptoms were well advanced, and in less than quite a few hours the patient was dead.
Now, from a strictly professional point of view, do you say that Mr. Saul failed in his duty as a doctor by performing this operation?
Mr. Saul did not seek the consent of the next of kin to this operation. That in itself was a breach of duty of one sort. But into the bargain, he displayed, in my opinion, an unbelievable disregard for the life of a patient under his care. There are other measures that Mr. Saul might have taken. He chose the high-risk, statistically indefensible heart transplant operation for personal reasons, not for medical ones.
In other words, it may truly be said that Mr. Saul's medical attentions accelerated the death of his patient.
Indeed it may. Eric Maple is dead when he might very well have been alive.
Sir Austin, on the night of May the 7th, we've been told Eric Maple had a massive coronary thrombosis.
Yes.
Now, what is a massive coronary thrombosis and what are its consequences?
Coronary thrombosis occurs when one of the vessels supplying the heart becomes obstructed by a blood clot. Massive is merely an adjective used to indicate that the interference with the circulatory system is severe.
And what's the worst single effect of a coronary thrombosis?
Death.
Yes, indeed, but those that don't die, are they sometimes left with damage of a certain sort?
No, scarring of the heart can occur, yes. What this means is that the cardiac muscle itself becomes badly strained, causing a weakening of the heart as an effectively functioning organ.
Had scarring of the heart occurred with Eric Maple, do you happen to know?
No, it's debatable. Perhaps, to some extent.
Why do you say it's debatable?
Well, I was unable to examine the heart myself until after the event, when it had already been removed from the body and some decomposition had set in. Well, it's impossible to tell with any certainty at that stage. Well, a pathologist had the same trouble. You had his report here, haven't you?
Oh, yes, indeed. But wouldn't the surgeon on the spot be in a better position to make a judgment concerning this heart scarring?
The main problem in these cases...
Surely, Sir Austin, once Mr. Saul had the patient on the heart-lung machine, he would be able to inspect the heart and make a proper judgment.
Oh, yes, yes. He should have been able to.
Yes, so here we have a patient saddled not only with a diseased mitral valve, but with a heart so severely weakened that it had ceased to perform its natural function. So Mr. Saul decided the only course was to perform a heart transplant.
Mr. Saul found that by chance a heart had suddenly become available in casualty. He didn't stop to think any further. The only possible explanation is that he wanted the publicity and esteem that a heart transplant operation might be expected to bring him.
I see. Now, Sir Austin, these other measures Mr. Saul might have taken rather than perform the transplant, what are they?
What?
We shall need to know in some detail, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, quite obviously he should have performed a bypass operation. That's the only thing to have done.
Now, what is that?
A bypass operation is quite the commonest technique that a surgeon can deploy for the relief of coronary thrombosis. The obstructed vessel is circumvented by, well, what really amounts to a rather sophisticated bit of plumbing. A section of vein is taken from another part of the body and sewn into the coronary artery above the obstruction. The other end is fastened below it, thus providing a bypass for the blood. It requires very delicate surgery, of course, but in the right hands, the results can be very satisfying.
Well, if he believed it to be the best chance for his patient, is there any reason why a surgeon would not have performed this bypass operation?
Because it was beyond his skill, perhaps.
Beyond his skill?
Possibly.
Sir Austin, you're telling the court that this complete heart transplant is technically simpler than the bypass operation you described earlier.
Yes, my lord, I am.
Because you seem to be implying that because he found this bypass operation beyond his skill, the accused didn't even consider it for his patient.
I can think of no other possible explanation of events, my lord. The bypass operation should have been done. It's impossible to avoid the conclusion that by his ill-timed surgical attention, Mr. Saul shortened the life of his patient.
Sir Austin, did Eric Maple at any time express to you an opposition to the idea of a heart transplant?
The matter was never discussed between us, but I understand that his wife was very much...
Eric Maple said nothing to you, Sir Austin.
No, but as I say, his wife
Thank
was...
you. Now, how quickly did your opinion of Mr. Saul as a medical man deteriorate?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you mean.
Something over a year ago, you took him on as your assistant, believing he had the correct qualifications. Now you believe the opposite. When did this happen? Suddenly, at a certain point, or gradually?
Oh, gradually, yes.
Yet you still kept him on as your assistant.
Well, you can't just sack a man simply because an atmosphere of hostility has arisen. A surgical unit isn't run like the Kremlin, you know. A consultant has to strive to be primus inter pares, not God Almighty.
Yet you've implied Mr. Saul was incompetent. A fundamental technique like the bypass operation was beyond his skill. Now, were you not consequently endangering the lives of your patients by permitting him to continue in the unit?
Well, things were usually done under my aegis. And besides, I did finally refuse him permission to operate on any heart cases.
And yet immediately afterwards you left him to be roster surgeon over the weekend. The only surgeon on duty when the crisis occurred. Now, come, Sir Austin, you can't have it both ways. Either you believe in Mr. Saul as a competent medical man, or you were behaving utterly irresponsibly and failing to dismiss him from the hospital.
Now, look here, I'm not on trial
Did you
here.
dislike Mr. Saul on sight, Sir Austin? Tell me, what was the worst offence Mr. Saul did on May the 7th? He performed a heart transplant? Or that he performed it without first consulting you?
My lord, must I answer these questions?
Yes, Sir Austin, I'm afraid you must. Your personal attitude to Mr. Saul is plainly relevant.
Did you always dislike Mr. Saul?
He was not a particularly easy man to like. Brash, conceited, a certain curious disrespect about him.
Well, you must certainly have believed in his ability then, Sir Austin, for you to have endured all that.
I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was wrong. But there is often surgical talent beneath a rough exterior, even in these colonials, as I believe we're no longer allowed to call them.
Thank you, Sir Austin. No further questions.
You may leave the witness box, Sir Austin.
Thank you, my lord.
That completes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
For my first witness, I call the defendant, Stephen Saul.
What is your religion?
Church of England.
Take the book in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Stephen Saul, surgeon at Belsides Hospital, Fulchester.
I am.
Where did you receive your medical training, Mr. Saul?
I qualified as a surgeon in Australia, my home country. I worked there for a while, and I came to Britain. I was at the Merriman Foundation for 18 months in Edinburgh, and since then at Belsides.
Now, on the night of May the 7th last at Belsides Hospital, did you perform a heart transplant operation on Eric Maple, a patient in the intensive care unit?
I did, yes.
And what was the result of that operation?
Well, as they say, the operation was a great success, but the patient died.
Did you seek the consent of the patient's next of kin to the performing of the operation?
No, I did not.
Did you seek the consent of the patient himself?
Oh, yes. I sought that and got it.
Well, perhaps you could tell us the circumstances in which you sought and obtained his consent.
Eric Maple was a patient in the unit who, for one reason and another, I was more than ordinarily concerned about. He was a desperately sick man. He was suffering from a diseased mitral valve. In my book, he needed surgery to have a chance of survival, but Sir Austin didn't agree.
Now, what was Sir Austin's objection to surgery in Eric Maple's case?
He had a notion that medication would do the trick. That or a pacemaker if things got worse. But I didn't agree. What if a new strain was suddenly put on him? What if he had a coronary, for instance?
You said precisely that to Sir Austin, did you?
Oh, yes, I told him that. No irresponsibility there.
And how did Sir Austin respond?
Badly. There was a row. Finally, I told him that if he didn't consent to the mitral valve operation, he could be forcing us to having to think about a transplant operation sooner or later. It was instinct rather than reason, if you like, but events have proved me right.
And what did you do next?
I approached Mrs. Maple, but she turned me down flat. You know all that. I'd noticed something a bit odd about Eric in the many chats I'd had with him in intensive care. It seemed to me that he wasn't half as much in harmony with his wife as he liked to make out. In fact, he was a bit scared of her. So I decided that I'd have a go at approaching him independently. Now, when he found out just how bad things could really get, he practically begged me to do anything I could to keep him alive. He had nothing against a heart transplant, but he had a hell of a lot against dying. He just agreed with his wife because it made for a peaceful life, but deep down, he felt quite differently.
No one was with you when you spoke to Eric Maple in this way, Mr. Saul?
Oh, no, I'd never witnessed, if that's what you mean.
No. Now, on May the 7th at about 7 p.m., Eric Maple had this massive coronary attack.
That's right. Couldn't have happened at a worse time, really. It was a Saturday night. You see, there's not much staff about. With the help of Sister Bland and two of the housemen, I got Eric onto a heart-lung machine. I cracked his chest, and it only took one look to see what was up. The heart had been straining like a team of horses. The muscle was terribly scarred. It was critical, in my view.
So what did you do, Mr. Saul?
Well, first of all, I just tried to figure it. I mean, you see, once you've got a patient on a heart-lung machine, you've got quite a bit of time to weigh things up. The blockage wasn't going to clear, that was for sure. Even if it did, the heart was too badly damaged to ever take over again. So I decided that I'd better contact Sir Austin Semple.
Where did you go to do this?
Veronica Bland's office. It's the nearest phone.
And did you in fact contact Sir Austin?
No, just as I came into the office, a hospital orderly came in with a notification from casualty. It was to say that a heart was available. The consent forms were in order. And the urgency of the question was, could we use the heart or should casualty contact other cardiac units in the area? Well, all thought of contacting Sir Austin just went out of my head. I went straight back to the theatre and I told Veronica to alert the transplant team.
Did you say something else to Sister Bland at this time?
Yes, I said that Sir Austin was in the country and that he couldn't be reached. And I said, the hell with Sir Austin.
And did you also say, the hell with Eric Maple? If I'm supposed to be on the lookout for a guinea pig, then I just found a main contender, didn't I? This is where I blind the world, whatever it costs.
Yeah, I said something like that.
Now, would you tell the court what you meant?
Well, I mean, in saying the hell with Eric Maple, I didn't mean that. You know, the guinea pig, that's not the way I looked on him. I was excited. What I meant was, look, I mean, surely it's obvious. It was just irony. This is where I blind the world. Surely you don't think I meant that? I mean, the calculations that mattered when something like this. First of all, there was no time to waste. Ideally, you should transplant a heart out of a donor's body almost before it stops beating. Now, contacting Sir Austin would have only meant prevarications, delay, ultimate failure to save my patient. Secondly, any other operation could not really be counted upon to have achieving a lasting effect. A bypass operation would have been pointless because it would require the heart to take up as a pump again. And I'd already made up my mind that it was so badly scarred as to make that impossible. Now, thirdly, as long as Eric Maple remained on a heart-lung machine, he was as good as dead anyway, so I might as well go for broke. Have a shot at the old miracle syndrome. Resurrect him.
Mr. Saul, I would like you to explain that last remark.
Well, let's face it, my lord. I mean, do you know how long a human being can last on a heart-lung machine? Days, months, years, theoretically. But as long as the heart doesn't take over again, then that person just isn't alive. They're a vegetable. They're a process. You've either got to continue until it makes an idiocy out of the whole business of living and dying. I am accused of criminal irresponsibility, of manslaughter. But the criminal irresponsibility occurred weeks before, I say, when Sir Austin Semple refused to replace that diseased mitral valve. If that had been done, Eric Maple would still be alive today, grateful to the medical profession, instead of just another one of its victims.
You know, Mr. Saul, it's really a great pity that at the time you discussed the subject of a possible heart transplant with the patient Eric Maple, there was no one else present to hear just what was said.
Well, the fact is, of course, I didn't expect anything to happen to Eric quite so soon.
It's usual, isn't it, in cases where a transplant is envisaged, to get the written consent of the patient himself or next of kin.
Yes, that's where you seriously envisaged the likelihood. I guess I didn't.
Yet when Sir Austin Semple poured cold water on your enthusiasm for an operation to replace the diseased mitral valve, you told him then he was putting the unit in the position of having to consider a transplant eventually.
Well, it was to try and impress upon him just how serious I thought things were. I hardly expected that very contingency to arise by the end of the same week, obviously.
I see. From the point of view of medical ethics, however, shouldn't you really have approached Mrs. Frieda Maple before embarking on this operation?
Look, I'm not pretending everything I did on May the 7th was the way that it should have been done. But if I broke the rules, it was because I had to. It was a top emergency. There was a heart available, and it had to be transferred quickly.
Yes, I quite see that. Yet we're stuck, aren't we, with the unhappy fact that we've only your word for it. Eric Maple consented to the transplant.
Look, if you're trying to say that I'm lying, well, just go ahead.
We might well come to something like that, yes. For you are capable of lying, aren't you, Mr. Saul? You lied to Miss Bland when you told her Sir Austin Semple was in the country and couldn't be reached.
That was because...
You allowed that lie to be accepted by the whole transplant team. Now, they'd hardly have let you proceed if they'd known Sir Austin Semple simply hadn't been contacted, would they?
The team is made up of local surgeons who hold themselves in readiness for when the call of emergency goes out. They don't have to ask questions on the administrative side.
What did you say on the night of May the 7th that was true, I wonder? Could it have been that other remark to Miss Bland? This is where I blind the world, Veronica, whatever it costs.
The case of the Queen against Saul will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. The trial of Stephen Saul, accused of manslaughter and criminal assault, today enters its final stages. Stephen Saul, surgeon, is accused of manslaughter and criminal assault in that he accelerated the death of Eric Maple by performing a heart transplant operation.
It was a top emergency. There was a heart available and it had to be transferred quickly.
Yes, I quite see that. Yet we're stuck, aren't we, with the unhappy fact that we've only your word for it. Eric Maple consented to the transplant.
Look, if you're trying to say that I'm lying, well, just go ahead.
We might well come to something like that, yes. For you are capable of lying, aren't you, Mr. Saul? You lied to Miss Bland when you told her Sir Austin Semple was in the country and couldn't be reached.
That was because...
You allowed that lie to be accepted by the whole transplant team. Now, they'd hardly have let you proceed if they'd known Sir Austin Semple simply hadn't been contacted, would they?
The team is made up of local surgeons who hold themselves in readiness for when the call of emergency goes out. They don't have to ask questions on the administrative side.
What did you say on the night of May the 7th that was true, I wonder? Could it have been that other remark to Miss Bland? This is where I blind the world, Veronica, whatever it costs.
Look, I have just told the court all that was irony.
Are you an ambitious man, Mr. Saul?
Well, in a profession that offers opportunities, I like to get ahead, sure.
Whatever it costs.
Now listen to me, I don't have
Sir
to
Austin
stand
Semple
here.
has described the heart transplant as a very theatrical technique, Mr. Saul. Royal Shakespeare surgery was his phrase. Would you agree with that?
Well, I'm not sure that I know what that means, and I wouldn't be too certain that Sir Austin does either.
Why, something showy, more for the effect than the consequence. Wouldn't you allow that certain members of the medical profession are now saying that the heart transplant achieves results altogether too meagre to be considered a viable technique anymore?
Doctors have always disagreed with each other about things like that. Late last century, there was a group of surgeons who criticized the germ theory as crazy. They told Lister and his supporters exactly where they could put their ideas about antisepsis.
Oh, yes, and yet, Mr. Saul, while thousands of worthy surgeons the world over perform unheeded miracles every day, the newspapers only give coverage to those who provide the sensational or the theatrical displays, don't they? Yes, a young surgeon could do a lot for his career by pulling off a heart transplant, particularly in the teeth of opposition from the medical establishment. Overnight stardom, so to say, his name in lights. Do you know the statistics of success with the heart transplant operation, Mr. Saul?
Well, it depends on what you mean by statistics of success. For some, it's meant many months. But for up to 8 people now, it's been a gift of a further 3 years of life.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Saul. But of the 183 operations performed, 68% of the patients died within 3 months.
Eric Maple was a dead man on that heart-lung machine anyway. And then, as if by a miracle, a new living heart was being offered to him. For me, there was only one thing to do, and I did it.
Do you know the statistics of success with the bypass operation, Mr. Saul?
No, not offhand, I don't.
Oh, well, they're very high. I quote to you the American Medical Survey for 1973. The Maryland Heart Clinic had, to the date of publication, performed some 2,000 of these operations with a failure rate of only 3%.
Now, well, 3% would be an overall figure. Patients with Eric Maple's critical heart condition, the failure rate would be far higher. What about the long-term effects? Does it say anything about those?
I can't believe you don't actually know, but up to 3 years of normal life for most patients following surgery.
Look, we cannot discuss these things in abstract. I saw the condition Eric Maple's heart was in, and I took a decision accordingly. A bypass operation would have been pointless. Contacting Sir Austin would have only meant arguments. He would have used his authority to...
Yes?
Oh, nothing, forget it.
I'd rather not.
No, forget it. You know, I don't know what Sir Austin would have done. Maybe he would have agreed with me. Maybe he would have offered me a cigar. None of it mattered. I used my own authority because there was no time to mess about.
Sir Austin would have used his authority to insist on the bypass operation. Is that what you were going to tell the court?
How do I know what he would have done?
Much less theatrical, Mr. Saul. In no sense a starring vehicle for you.
Oh, look.
Do you account your own medical judgment as so much superior to that of Sir Austin?
I didn't say anything like that.
You implied it on May the 7th, when you automatically assumed Sir Austin would disagree with you, and that disagreement would be to the disadvantage of your patient. Yet what was to his benefit, really? The heart transplant?
I thought so at the time, yes.
It would be most interesting to know what you actually thought then, certainly. You've told us one thing, anyway. that as long as he could only be kept alive on the heart-lung machine, Eric Maple was as good as dead, and that therefore you might as well go for broke.
Well, by that I meant...
Yes,
that
it's perfectly clear what you meant, Mr. Saul. Could you have performed the bypass operation if you considered it necessary?
Of course.
Very intricate surgery is required. The heart transplant was a better bet for a dead man, however. Poor doomed Eric Maple. Irrevocably embarked on his journey to a better world, so why shouldn't he go out making a name for his hard-working physician? Of course, there was always the wild chance that the transplant might be a success. But even if it wasn't, headlines, Mr. Saul, attention paid, a foot on the ladder.
I should just like to make it clear that I do not admit to one charge that you've made against me. I did what was best for my patient. I didn't think what might have been best for me. Whether I should have contacted Sir Austin Semple or not is another question. But I didn't play games with Eric Maple's life. I didn't kill him.
Yet why did you not first perform the bypass operation when you knew that this was the action most cardiac surgeons would have taken in the circumstances?
Was it? Who says so?
Sir Austin says so. Your superior, whose judgment you tell us you don't necessarily consider inferior to your own.
Look, it isn't an easy thing to explain. A doctor just has to go as he's led sometimes. But there comes a final moment in surgery, well, in most disciplines, where you don't think, but you just do. Do what you have to do. Now, you could be wrong, of course, but you have to take a chance.
You could be wrong, of course. So you're prepared to admit, then, in objective terms, that your choice of the heart transplant rather than the bypass operation may have accelerated Eric Maple's death?
Mr. Saul, you must answer that question.
I did what was best for my patient. If the heart graft had taken, he could have had a new life. I mean, that is the idiocy of all this, isn't it? If the transfer had worked, this case would never have been brought and I wouldn't be here now. But because it didn't work, I'm just a boy from the bush, outsmarted by the city slickers as usual.
You are Wilfred Gavin MacDonald, and you are Director of Cardiac Research at the Merriman Foundation, Edinburgh.
I am.
Are you acquainted with the defendant, Stephen Saul?
Yes, when he first came to these shores from Australia, he joined my group at the Merriman Foundation. Merriman has as its objects the development of new techniques in heart surgery and the training of surgeons in the existing techniques. And I think I have no hesitation in saying that Mr. Saul was one of the most promising young surgeons I have ever encountered.
Did you ever find Mr. Saul hasty in diagnosis, injudicious?
Oh, nothing to speak of. We all make our mistakes from time to time. Surgeons aren't God. But you could say that Mr. Saul was instinctive rather than calculating.
What does that mean exactly?
Well, when I was a younger man, I was very interested in flying, and I soon found there were two sorts of pilots, those who flew by the book and those who flew by the seat of their pants. And the latter, I may say, were often the only ones able to cope with an emergency.
And you're saying that a similar comparison can be made between surgeons?
I am. Strict logic and consideration of the facts will only get you so far. Then comes the leap in the dark. Your calculating man will do nothing. Your instinctive man will take that leap and perhaps give his patient a chance of life he never even knew was open to him.
I see. Now, Mr. MacDonald, is it possible to say with any certainty that Mr. Saul might have accelerated the death of his patient by not performing a certain bypass operation?
Oh, absolutely not. No, there are times when the bypass operation will serve in coronary cases, times when it won't.
So there are no absolutes involved?
None whatever.
Thank you, Mr. MacDonald. That's all.
Mr. MacDonald, isn't it customary for a surgeon to seek consultation with other surgeons before performing an operation with such a low record of success as the heart transplant?
Consultation before surgery is always advisable, yes. Particularly in cardiac cases, you could say.
Is failure to seek such consultation a kind of irresponsibility, then, towards the patient, showing insufficient concern for his welfare, his life?
That's going much too far. My feelings are always to trust the instinct of the surgeon responsible.
Allowing him to crash by the seat of his pants, as it were. I see. Well, surely many respected members of the medical profession would quite reject your notions of instinct and calculation in surgery.
No doubt. But then I have more experience than most.
While Mr. Saul was with you at Merriman, Mr. MacDonald, did you think him an ambitious man?
Well, we're all ambitious, aren't we? That sort of thing's neither here nor there. Young surgeons have a career to carve out for themselves just the same as
Please,
you.
I think you know what I'm asking you. Did Mr. Saul strike you as exceptionally ambitious?
Well, he was ambitious, yes. It was the most notable thing about him. The poor boy seemed obsessed by the fact that he'd come from those obscure origins away there in Australia and was now alone in the big world. Do you know what he once said to me at a party? "Look out, Dad. I'll do anything to get to the top of my profession." But of course he was half-sweet.
I'll do anything to get to the top of my profession. Thank you, Mr. MacDonald.
Mr. Lotterby?
My lord, I have some unexpected evidence to introduce, something which has only just come to light. I, with your permission, would like to call a further witness, Dr. Martin Venning.
Oh, is this all right with you, Mr. Dolan?
Yes, my lord.
All right, Mr. Lotterby.
Much obliged, my lord. Dr. Martin Venning, please. You are Dr. Martin Venning of 49 Halls Avenue, Fulchester, and you are a haematologist at Belsides Hospital.
Yes, all that is correct.
What is a haematologist, please, doctor?
Well, a haematologist is simply a blood specialist. I deal with cases of blood disorder at Belsides, and I'm also in charge of the transfusion unit.
Were you concerned in a heart transplant operation which took place at Belsides on the night of May the 7th last?
I was. I'm a member of the transplant team, and on that occasion I had a general aegis over circulatory problems whilst the heart swap was effected.
Did you strike any particular problems during the operation?
No, not during the operation. Some hours afterwards, however, when the patient was back in intensive care, there began to be signs of internal hemorrhage. Now, of course, that's something you've got to be very particular about following transplant surgery. It's usually a sign of graft failure, what's more commonly called rejection. Mr. Saul, who led the team for the transplant, was called and discovered a perforation. Nothing to do with graft failure, as it happens, which he accordingly remedied. But the patient had suffered grave blood loss by then, and I gave a transfusion with blood from the hospital bank. It was a major transfusion, some 5 pints in all.
Was there any further hemorrhaging?
No, but by the early hours of the morning, signs of jaundice developed. And within hours, total rejection of the new heart had occurred and the patient was dead.
I see. So you're saying then, doctor, that if jaundice had not occurred, the patient might well have gone on to accept the new heart and survive?
For all we know, yes.
What was the cause of the jaundice, doctor?
It's a kind of complication you get following a severe hemorrhage, of course. That didn't altogether satisfy us in this case, however. Then we thought by complete chance the patient might have been carrying a virus which became active. That, in fact, seemed the most likely explanation until just a few days ago.
And what happened a few days ago, doctor?
Without, I hope, making rash claims, a minor advance in medical science was achieved, which rather alters that judgment. I should mention, first of all, that it's been discovered that certain persons, though not sick themselves, may be hepatitis carriers. Now, this, of course, means they must never become blood donors because they're passing on infected blood. It's been standard procedure to screen blood for this kind of abnormality, but unfortunately, the techniques available until now have only detected some 80% of cases. However, our research people have come up with a much more sensitive technique, which we feel sure can detect all but a random 2% of cases.
And what is the significance of this development to our hearing here today, doctor?
Maples was a very unusual blood group. And whereas previous tests had shown that the blood used in the transfusion was clean, when we checked back on that particular stock of blood, our new techniques now showed that it was hepatitis infected.
And what is hepatitis?
It's a liver disease which causes jaundice.
My lord, Dr. Venning's complete report on the matter with the full data. My friend can see it if he so wishes. Thank you, Dr. Venning. No further questions.
Well, Dr. Venning, This is remarkable evidence to emerge at so late a stage.
Unfortunately, we can't yet organize medical research to fit in with the timetables of the law.
You're saying, unless I misunderstood you, that Eric Maple might not have died if he hadn't contracted jaundice, and that he mightn't have contracted jaundice if he hadn't received from you a transfusion of infected blood.
That's correct.
Yet, in fact, you can state neither of these two things with utter assurance, can you? Well, you've just said yourself that jaundice is a fairly common complication following hemorrhage.
That's true, yes.
And does jaundice cause rejection of the new organ following transplant surgery?
I didn't say that.
It's what you need to say, Doctor, if your testimony is to be of any real value. For if jaundice, introduced into the body by a regrettable error, doesn't actually cause rejection, then the rejection might have happened anyway, and all this has nothing to do with our case.
You don't understand. The effect of jaundice is to break down the hemoglobin in the blood. Now, that's a critical condition in itself. If the body is fighting something else at the same time, then it really doesn't have much of a chance.
Fighting something else? Why fighting, Doctor?
I'm sorry?
Well, in the case in point, the case of Eric Maple, what exactly was he fighting after his heart transplant?
Why, the problem of the rejection of the new heart.
Exactly, Doctor. I quite agree. Thank you.
May the witness be released, my lord?
Yes, you may go, Dr. Venning.
That completes the case for the defence.
Mr. Golding?
My lord, members of the jury, this seems to me a clear case of manslaughter and criminal assault. Now, you've heard expert evidence to show that the obvious, the only thing to have done was to perform a bypass operation on Mr. Maple. Now, on the charge of manslaughter, the defendant says that the heart was too damaged for a bypass operation to be of any use. But we've only his word for this. The word of a man who has already admitted lying to his colleagues about Sir Austin's whereabouts. And the reason we have only his word for it is that he didn't give his colleagues, and in particular his superior, the opportunity to examine Mr. Maple before the transplant was attempted. Therefore, the bypass operation, which I suggest would have had a very good chance of succeeding, was never allowed to take place. It is plain, therefore, that on the charge of manslaughter, the accused, by choosing the wrong operation, accelerated his patient's death and was therefore grossly negligent in his decision to do this transplant. Now, the defence has belatedly introduced evidence of an infected blood transfusion. Well, regrettable though this was, it has nothing to do with our case here today. Had Mr. Saul not performed this operation in the first place, no transfusion of infected blood would have been necessary, and no jaundice would have taken place. In any case, jaundice does not cause organ rejection. Eric Maple rejected the heart put into his body by a self-motivated surgeon, and that is why he is a dead man today. On the charge of manslaughter, therefore, your verdict must clearly be one of guilty. Now, as regards the second charge of criminal assault, the accused is guilty of assault if he did not first obtain Mr. Maple's consent to that operation. Now, unless you believe, really believe, that the accused's story that Mr. Maple changed his mind and suddenly agreed to a transplant, well, you must find the accused guilty on that charge as well.
My lord, members of the jury, on May the 7th, Eric Maple suffered a massive coronary thrombosis, leaving his heart so badly damaged that despite all efforts, it could not be restarted. And the only hope for his life lay in a transplant operation. Now, these were the conclusions of the surgeon on the spot, Stephen Saul. Any other operation, a bypass operation or whatever, was completely out of the question because the heart was useless. And by great good fortune, a heart suddenly became available for transplant. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to try and put yourselves in this surgeon's position if you can. From this moment, speed was of the essence. Remember, a heart should be transplanted as soon as possible after the donor's death. There's no time to seek consent of the next of kin, no time to confer with his medical superior. Oh, yes, I've no doubt that Mr. Saul may have broken some of the usual medical procedures, but out of necessity, for the sake of his patient. And remember, Mr. Saul says that he had obtained the consent of Eric Maple to perform this transplant operation if he felt it necessary to save his life. Now, Sir Austin Semple believes that Mr. Saul made the wrong decision. Well, he himself might have made a wrong decision not to take Mr. Saul's advice and operate earlier on the patient's mitral valve, which arguably might have prevented the coronary attack. And similarly, if after major surgery the patient had not been given a transfusion of hepatitis-infected blood, he might not have contracted jaundice, and thus he might have overcome the inherent rejection problems. All these are possibilities. But the one thing of which we can be certain is that when Stephen Saul made his decision to perform this heart transplant operation, he did so believing it was the one course open to save his patient's life. And you must find him not guilty on both counts.
Members of the jury, there are two distinct charges against the accused: manslaughter and criminal assault. Now, in performing a surgical operation, a doctor may only be found guilty of manslaughter if it is shown that he was grossly negligent in deciding on a particular operation, or grossly negligent in the way that he operated, and, of course, that he accelerated the death of his patient. Now, there is no allegation that this operation was incompetently performed, only that it was the wrong operation. So the question is, was the proper operation the bypass operation? Would that operation have been more likely to succeed and then prolong Mr. Maple's life? Now, if your answer to these questions is yes, you may well be drawn to the conclusion that the accused was grossly negligent in performing the heart transplant operation, and you will then find him guilty of manslaughter. Now, as to the charge of criminal assault, a doctor who performs a surgical operation without the due consent of patient or next of kin is certainly behaving unlawfully. So if you believe that Mr. Saul is lying when he says he had his patient's consent, you will find him guilty on this charge of criminal assault. Remember, it is for the prosecution to prove their case beyond reasonable doubt. So if you have a reasonable doubt, you will find him not guilty. Now, would you retire and consider your verdict?
All stand.
The jury now withdrawing consists of ordinary members of the public. They, like you, have only heard the evidence that you have heard. Now, we await their verdict.
The accused will remain standing. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict on which you're all agreed?
Yes.
On the first count of manslaughter, do you find the accused, Stephen Saul, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
On the second count of assault, do you find the accused, Stephen Saul, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
Stephen Saul, you have been found not guilty on both charges, and you are free to leave this court.
All stand.
Next week, a chance to join another jury when our cameras return to the Crown Court.